Hi guys, Gary here from AZscanners. Today we're going to cover a short video comparing the ScanGauge2 and the ScanGauge3. So around 12 months ago we released ScanGauge3. So after 1 year of it being released, we thought we would compare the two because naturally we do get quite a lot of people coming through asking what are the key differences between the two units. So as you can see, they're noticeably different in size and design. So you've got the ScanGauge2, which is a much smaller, more compact unit, comparing to the ScanGauge3, which is obviously a larger touchscreen design. Moving on from size and design, both of these still have the core digital gauges. The key difference between the two is the ScanGauge2, you can only view 4 gauges at any one time. And with that, you just see the abbreviation of the actual gauges, compared to the ScanGauge3, where you can now actually view up to 9 gauges at any one time, which is quite nice. And in addition to that, it does also have the full description of the actual gauge. Moving on from the standard gauges, both units do have the X-gauge built in, which is basically vehicle-specific gauges. The ScanGauge2, you need to manually enter the X-gauge codes from our website. ScanGauge3, you can manually enter the codes, but it also does have the X-gauge auto scan feature, which will read your vehicle's ECU and retrieve any vehicle-specific gauges, which is it's quite nice to have. Beyond that, one of the key features of the ScanGauge3, which has been introduced, is the visual and audio alerts, which is a really nice feature. You can select any gauge on the unit and you can set up visual and audio alerts. So for example, if you wanted a specific temperature for the trans temps, if it exceeds this, you will be visually and audio alerted. So it's a really, really useful feature for those kind of vital temperature gauges. Moving on from that, ScanGauge3 does have built-in Wi-Fi. So any updates that you do, you can do it directly through the unit, comparing to the ScanGauge2, where you would need that to send it into us guys to do that for you. Both of the units, they have the engine code reader function, so you're able to scan the engine module of your vehicle. The key difference between the two, the ScanGauge2 would return the diagnostic trouble code only, whereas the ScanGauge3, it'll return the actual diagnostic trouble code and the description, which just saves a little bit of time there. Moving on from the engine code reader, ScanGauge3 actually does come with a window mount included in the price, comparing to the ScanGauge2, where you would need to purchase that additionally for $50. So it is quite nice to have that included with the ScanGauge3. Price of the actual units, the ScanGauge2 is $270, with the ScanGauge3 coming in at $415. In summary, both of the units, you still get the key core features there. So you get your digital gauges, the X-gauge features, and the engine code reader. I guess it's just down to personal preference, really. Obviously, you've got the ScanGauge2, which is it's more of a smaller kind of compact, durable unit, comparing to the ScanGauge3, which is a bit more of a techie design with a larger touchscreen there. So fully down to personal preference. And that's about it. Video comparing ScanGauge2 and ScanGauge3. Hope you liked it, guys. Catch you next time.